This is a kind of Freudian understanding of what's gone awry, this determination to make everyone safe, which ultimately means protecting them from the very idea of an external reality with its own demands and standards that are universal that you might want to try to live up to, that this is sort of damaging to our self-affirmations, to remain in the bubble of, infantile narcissism where you're loved simply for being you.
Matt and Marilyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
So I love the title of your seminar, The Battle of the Sexes. Can you tell us a little bit about where this seminar came from, how you came up with it, and what you were teaching this week?
Well, I guess it grows out of a sense that relations between men and women are kind of fraught these days, kind of conflictual, shot through with a dreary political moralism. I think we were encouraged to conceive the act of love on the model of a legal contract, talk about consent and all that. And one thing we wanted to do was to recover a sense of play and delighting in sexual difference, and try to kind of recover the positive possibilities in sort of the dance between men and women.
Yeah. We at the first class we talked in general about what the culture feels like right now, and the word was surveilled or surveillance. So you feel always watched, you watch yourself, you second guess your own behavior, which makes everybody sort of paranoid and paralyzed sometimes. So less happy, less joyful. I mean, you can't worry about surveillance if you're going to enter into something playful. So that's...
Yeah, and there is a kind of, I think, sexual paranoia that's cultivated in institutions. I mean, one thing we talk about is the campus sex bureaucracy and its determination to instill this, one thing it does is kind of interpret male sexuality in terms of sort of the criminal concepts like sexual assault and sexual violence and rape, and try to kind of make that stand for male sexuality altogether, which kind of constructs this environment of paranoia. And it does seem like especially incumbent on the male is a kind of self-suspicion about your own most basic inclinations. And one effect of that seems to be men trying to signal their, being innocuous in various ways. And women often report the kind of dissatisfaction with the type of male that's been brought into being by these injunctions.
Yeah. The course is going to end, I think, on a hopeful note, sort of towards joy. So how do you end the battle of the sexes? And it is in sort of mutual surrender and delight in the other as other. So it's a sort of celebration ultimately of sexual difference as something that enlarges both of us. We get to participate in each other, experience sexual difference as gift and given and received. I don't think the battle will come to blows. I think we will.
In the class, you mean?
In the class.
We'll see.
I think we will find that the field is won by both of us.
And you talk about a dreary political moralism. So when you talk about playfulness and finding joy in the other person, that all sounds great. So why did we get here to a place where we have this kind of dreary political moralism?
Well, it's a historical question, and we do, in fact, get into sort of the birth of this therapeutic apparatus that seems to hover over all institutions now. And it's a fascinating story, and there's sort of a couple of different rival genealogies you could give for the origins of this. So we read some Christopher Lasch, who talks about sort of the colonization of everyday life by expertise, and this determination to kind of bring every aspect of life under this administrative supervision. I mean, things like children's play even is now so kind of structured and supervised. So that's a story that really begins in the 19th century, believe it or not. But then after World War II, you have, boy, how much to get into this in a short interview. Yeah, I don't think I want to go down that rabbit hole. Let's see. You're going to have to edit this.
Well, what happens is ideas of making everybody basically feel good and safe start to gain in predominance, and fathers, the figure of the father, represents reality. So a love that you have to earn, not the unconditional love of a mother and infant, but something earned. But there is, of course, a threat to the self, because you're not just loved for you being you, special. You have to accomplish, achieve, and go into reality. So we really talk about how this bureaucratic apparatus that we see on campuses, for instance,
An HR department.
and HR departments are sort of matriarchal power. Matriarchy defines sort of as this primordial mother, this nurturing mother that protects you from all external threats. This has been a really interesting line.
Yeah,
in
so
our
this
classes.
is a basically Freudian interpretation of political correctness that we're getting from a number of authors. Yeah, and so this is a kind of Freudian understanding of what's gone awry, this determination to make everyone safe, which ultimately means protecting them from the very idea of an external reality with its own demands and standards that are universal that you might want to try to live up to, that this is sort of damaging to our self-affirmations, to remain in the bubble of, infantile narcissism where you're loved simply for being you. There's another Freudian story we tell about this is after World War II, this highly politicized wing of the psychoanalytic movement, they're calling themselves Freudo-Marxists. The project here is to destroy the ancient mystique of the father, because it's in the family that sort of proto-fascist sympathies are thought to breed. Sort of an authoritarian personality type is formed. So immediately after World War II, you have the build out of this sort of therapeutic state, one element of which is sex education in schools, and the main thrust of which is to essentially undermine the authority of fathers for the sake of making the world safe against fascism. And it comes directly out of this the anti-fascist politics of sort of post-Holocaust politics. So it's an incredibly rich story.
So interesting. And I can imagine somebody thinking, well, we now have less chauvinism, or at least crude chauvinism. We have more kind of conscientiousness towards sexual harassment, sexual assault, and so on. Isn't this kind of a good thing, because now we're more aware of things that were kind of accepted and that were bad, and now we're more conscientious?
Yeah.
I think that's true, and that's the story that doesn't need a retelling by us. And the University of Austin, is a place that encourages kind of the minority report on what's going on, a more contrarian take. And so one of the kind of flip sides of that is this sense that the most intimate aspects of life are subject to a kind of political morality and a corresponding supervisory kind of administrative project that has many different manifestations, and which tends to get internalized as this self-suspicion, where nothing can kind of go unexamined. So it's a kind of suffocating self-consciousness that drains the spontaneity and vitality out of life.
And also sort of agency. So whereas in the 50s, a slap in the face toward male bad behavior, toward a cad, was sufficient, now you can't do that. You have to go report it anonymously to the campus Title IX officers. So it actually makes women somehow more timid, which is maybe not the outcome we were hoping for, right? So less agents of ourselves.
Like this image of the victim also gets internalized, and women become more sort of think of themselves that way.
Right. So now we need big daddy or big mommy of the campus to take care of ourselves in the way that maybe, like it's good not to be sexually harassed. This is an obvious statement. But to lose a sense of power over your own ability to determine what that is for you is perhaps not the kind of human flourishing we're hoping for.
And going back to, you started talking about a way out. Do you think on campuses, elsewhere, there's something we can do where we're more attentive to the problems of this kind of evolution, but also we're also attentive to the problems that people point out today with sexual harassment and chauvinism and whatnot. So is there anything we can do today?
Well, one thing might be to rehabilitate the idea of the gentleman, which is not simply, what we have now is a kind of feminized male who tries to broadcast his, being innocuous on these matters. But the gentleman is something different. It's a kind of, maybe a sense that to be strong towards women means to be protective of them.
It's self-command.
Self-command.
So rather than just sort of being gentle, you're actually very strong, even dangerous, but you do not behave dangerously, right?
Towards women.
Towards women, right? It is self-command. And
I think, a lot of this comes to, we're very confused about what masculinity might consist of or what might be a healthy masculinity. So we have this, on the one hand, all these pressures toward feminization, and then on the other hand, this reactive tendency.
Macho-ness.
Yeah, the kind of, there's a lot of kind of misogynistic online, sort of youth culture that, so we're kind of trapped in this kind of sick polarization that way.
Right.
And there is a whole tradition of, we call it the Western tradition of civilized sort of complementarity between the sexes, where really both are submitting to the other.
Right.
It isn't a unilateral submission on the part of women. It's a complementary.
Some mutual giving, and I think what you're describing is love.
There you
go.
Yeah. And you mentioned, what we try to do here at the University of Austin. So when I was reading your course description for the first time, I remember thinking, this is very cool because I wouldn't expect to read this course description in any university. Why is that?
Well, I think the universities have become invested in this project of social management according to the dictates of a view of sex relations as basically conflictual, as the male is basically toxic, the female is basically fragile and helpless. It's a weirdly regressive kind of picture. It has all kinds of paradoxical tendencies. But
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that has really been a focus of our class is that we are talking about men and women, which even that seems culturally radical. So,
Yeah.
so rather than persons or choosers. So this, I'm not even sure if that kind of discussion could happen on another university without at first apologizing
Yeah,
for
a
it
lot
and
of-
layering it in sort of self-effacement. Well, we're going to look at men and women, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of just jumping right into the binary without a sort of pre-inoculation against
Right.
thinking about this.
And how did that go? Were the students?
It's gone really well.
They're all-
the students have been great.
And they're diverse.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of gay kids, a boy and a girl, or man and a woman. Sorry, they're so young, or I'm so old. You're not old, but yeah, everyone has brought a real disposition to engage with this stuff, sort of searchingly, in good faith. Somehow, the University of Austin seems to have created a safe space for doing that. And I think maybe because it positions itself explicitly as an alternative to the kind of paranoid, stultifying environment of what, universities have become, it's made it possible. I think it's self-selecting kids who really want to get into this stuff and not shut it all down
Right.
based on some, someone saying that they're, wounded or harmed.
Right. And what's interesting too is that certainly not everybody holds the same view, not even by a long shot. And so sometimes conversations go back and forth and there's like pretty spicy exchanges, but they're meant to chip away at, help me understand what your point is, help me understand what your point is, how do we get to understand this issue? So it's exactly what you would hope for a university, right? Where the debates and the questionings have been all done in the same spirit.
Yeah,
Even the disagreements are done with friendship in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're reading from your brochure or something, but it's actually turned out like that. So
It's great to hear. It's a great note to end on as well. So Matt Crawford, Marilyn Simon, thank you so much.
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great.